I don't think I love you no more. You never seem to call me lately, but I don't think she knew me at all.
Alright, so today I wanted to go ahead and make a video and talk about Lieutenant Link with an I and Andy Colburn with the A, or as I like to call him, Colburn. So, particularly today, I want to speak about something that's always fascinated me, and that's the license plates from the RAV4. Now, until recently, I didn't know that the license plate, both of the license plates were found on the same day as the key. And almost every time something of significance is found in this case, it's Manitowoc County that's there, and in particular, it's Andrew Colburn and Lieutenant Link. So, specifically, what interests me about the license plate is something that most of you might not think is a big deal, but to me, it's very frustrating. So, let's speak hypothetically for a second, and let's say, and I'm going to use analogies, let's say that Stephen Avery, for just argument's sake, let's just say the state and their theories and their story that they laid out is correct. Stephen Avery kills Teresa Halbach. He backs the RAV into his garage, he shoots her, and I can go on and on and on with all of the forensic evidence that wouldn't support that theory. But specifically, he takes the RAV and whatever means necessary, I highly doubt he goes out the main road and brings the car all the way around, back down Cuss Road and drives it in that way. I'm sure he took some kind of little back road or a cut through or on the other side of the berm or whatever to get the car back there. Now, remember that I'm just, theoretically speaking here, because I don't believe that any of this is true. But instead of parking the car somewhere in the middle, instead of parking it, somewhere, anywhere on this 40-acre lot, he drives it all the way over, probably about 70 yards from the car crusher. Now, the state will say that, well, he wanted to put it close by the car crusher because he was planning on crushing it. Well, he had days to do that if that's what he wanted to do. As Wiegert said, he said, well, they had days to clean up or whatever. Well, if he wanted to crush it, it seems like he would have had ample time to do so. But if you look at where the Avery property is at, where the buildings and the houses are, that's actually closer to where somebody would have seen it from his own family. That's a path that they travel a lot to go back down into the pit, as they call it. Okay? So, to me, that's risking it. It wouldn't make sense for Avery to park it that close to the car crusher. And I believe Chuck lives over there close to the car crusher. That don't make sense. But specifically, one thing that I can't get off my mind is the state is saying that Stephen's finger is bleeding. That's how the blood got into the RAV. They're saying that his hands, and he was so sweaty and all of this stuff, and that's how he left touch DNA on the hood latch, but didn't leave any touch DNA on anything else in the vehicle that he touched. Didn't leave touch DNA anywhere around the battery. No fingerprints or touch DNA on the outside of the vehicle near the license plates where he would have been, fondling around the license plate, taking them off. There's no bolts put back in the holes where the license plates came off. I don't know if they were ever found. Were they laid right there in the grass? Were they claiming that they couldn't find them? He threw them away or what? There's handprints on the RAV4 cover, handprints and other fingerprints on the vehicle. None match Stephen Avery, but they won't tell us whose prints they were. And then in one photo, you had this, the cover of the RAV doesn't have any marks on it at the bottom left corner of the RAV spare tire cover. And in another picture, it does have marks on it. In the official photos on Stephen Avery case.org. So the state wants us to believe that Stephen Avery took these plates off, rolled them up because it was folded twice, so he bent them very, they're not thick aluminum or anything like that. You can easily bend them. Rolled these up with his hands and brought them all the way across the lot closer to his property. Instead of leaving them somewhere else, instead of burying them out in the pit, since he rolled them up, he could have just shoved them in the tailpipe of one of these old cars and took a stick and shoved them way up in the muffler. Never, ever would have been found. Okay, but instead he just, with his sweaty, bloody hands, carries these license plates closer to his house to dispose of them. And then none of his blood or DNA is found on the license plate. So I've always been fascinated about that. So as I'm looking into that and I'm thinking about that, I'm sitting here and I realize that Link and Colburn was there when the key was found, and the license plates were found on the same day. They had volunteer firefighters searching all the cars and trunks and all of that days before, and all of these different cars, tons of people out there from the highway patrol or state patrol, whatever they call them in Wisconsin, doing all these car searches, and these plates aren't found. And then November the 8th, same thing with the garage. Everything was pulled out, nothing found. Same thing with the trailer. It's been searched many times, nothing found. And all of a sudden, Link and Colburn show up. The key shows up. Link shows up to search the garage. The bullet shows up off camera. Link and Colburn show up. The plates show up. Lieutenant Link signs out of the log on the day that the RAV was found, but never signed in. After he gave a statement saying that he got there after the log was created, and then tried to change his story on the stand, say that he got there before the log was created. So every key piece of evidence follows these two individuals. Now Colburn has his own problems. As everybody knows, on November 3rd, he's calling the very first day of the missing person case. He calls to the dispatcher and calls in the license plate. So if you start looking at every minute detail of when things were found, who was there when he found them, the dots start to connect, but they don't connect to Stephen Avery. And when the car was first found, the car was in Manitowoc County's control for 3 hours before Calumet or Fact Bender, any of them guys got over there. So the very people that's not supposed to be on the property or investigating any of this or have a conflict of interest, well, not yet at this point, but I don't think that the investigation was turned over at that point. But the very people that Stephen Avery is suing, they are around when all of the important evidence is found, and they're guarding the RAV for 3 hours. People are coming and going. They don't know what the heck's going on. They don't know how to conduct an investigation, and even if they did, they have no interest in doing it the right way, because as they all have admitted, Peterson, Link, Cachet, all of these officers, Colburn, when asked a similar question, this isn't verbatim, but when asked a similar question about would it be more fair to Stephen Avery if you would have stayed out of the investigation? Would it have been more fair to Stephen Avery if this or this or that and blah, blah, blah? And every single time these individuals are approached with a question similar to that, they all say no. They cannot admit that, they do not recognize the conflict of interest. They do not respect the grounds of the conflict of interest. Many of them do not believe that Stephen Avery was innocent in the Penny Bernstein rape. A comment that Mike Halbach makes, to me, further iterates that and even raises suspicion in my mind when he says Stephen Avery got off with it the first time. I think he thinks that he's going to get off with it again. That implies, saying that he got off with it the first time, that implies that you think he was guilty and that he got off with it in the first case. Well, there's a big problem with the whole picture. This investigation, from the moment that Calumet was handed over authority, Manitowoc County, not one single officer should have been allowed on the property. Nothing's found, not the bones, not the key, the license plates, the bullet, all of which is fabricated. The DNA on the hood latch wasn't found, even though I think they just relabeled a growing swab. It wasn't found until after Brendan Dassey's coerced confession. None of this evidence, to me, forensically, has any validity to this case. It's such a unique case. In other cases, people, a lot of these arguments we wouldn't even be having. If this was just some random guy that's never really had any problems with the law enforcement, and you find all these bones on his property and blood and the cars there and all this stuff, then he's probably guilty. But this is a special case. This is a peculiar case because the defendant was suing the county for $36 million. And the insurance company, because of the wrongdoing, the evidence of wrongdoing in the case that he was suing over, the insurance company said they were not going to cover any damages. So that means Kasurik, piece of crap, Dennis Vogel, piece of crap, and Manitowoc County was going to be on the hook for those damages. So that is the reason why none of any affiliates with Manitowoc County should have had anything to do, should have never been on that property at all. Because they still think he's guilty in the Penny Bernstein case. So with anything that takes place on this property, they think Stephen Avery is guilty of murdering Teresa Halbach. But this time, they want to dot the I's and cross the T's. And that's where all of this evidence comes in. I don't know, and I can't prove, I can only speculate on who killed Teresa Halbach. But in my mind, in my opinion, I know for a fact that the police planted all of the evidence. Okay? So, it'd be a stretch. I mean, you have to at least entertain the ideal that Manitowoc County, somebody, whether it was they hired somebody or they got a convict that they had leverage on and made him do this and, directed him, whatever the case is, their involvement in this is way more than what it should have been to begin with. Money is the number one motivator for a lot of things. Okay, it's the root of all evil, greed. There's no way. I mean, you can look at it as a coincidence if you want to, but there's no way Kasurik, Vogel, and Manitowoc County was going to have judgments against them to where they owed Stephen Avery, let's just say he didn't get granted the full $36 million. Let's say he got granted $5 million or $10 million. There is no way Kasurik and Vogel and Manitowoc County was going to be paying Avery nothing. So if you think it's a conspiracy theory, if you think it's just crazy people sitting here on YouTube talking about whatever, you have the right to think that. But you would be foolish to think that there's no way that's possible, that could happen. Look no further than the evidence that the state tries to present to you. Okay? The story they lay out in the press conference is 100% false. To bolster that argument, Willis drops all 3 charges that stemmed from that coerced confession that was levied against Avery. The false imprisonment, the rape, etc. So that whole narrative, that whole story is false. That murder never happened there. There was no rape, stabbing, handcuffed to the bedpost in that trailer. There was no gunshot to the head, especially not a through and through shot to the head in that garage. That is a fantasy. There's no way Stephen Avery would have been smart enough to say, if he's smart enough to know, hey, I got to get this car away from my furthest away from my property as possible, but I'm going to bring the license plate and the car key and all these other items back to my house, or leave them in my house, and leave the cell phone and her other items in the front yard burn barrel, which I would have to research that, but I wouldn't be shocked if Manitowoc County was there when those items were found. I mean, so none of their stories add up. They have 10% of the bones are found in the burn pit, and then you have bones, many other bones, including pelvic bone, in the quarry and in Manitowoc County's property. And so Stephen Avery is this forensic cleaning guru, but he leaves evidence behind and brings most of them, tries to dispose of most of them. It don't add up, and it's a fallacy. So you have to really think about certain things, like even simple things like the license plate. There's nothing just happen. Like everything happens. Everything is what it is for a reason. Okay, these license plates is a big piece of evidence. When they were found, the circumstances in which they were found. I mean, for instance, the volunteer firefighter was told what to be looking for. We're looking for, blah, blah, blah. And specifically mentioned, we're looking for license plates inside of cars. After a lot of these, almost all of these cars have already been searched a couple days before. So he's out on a mission specifically looking for license plates. Lo and behold, he finds license plates. So Coburn and Link are major players in this. Regardless of what angle you look at it from, they're corrupt, but there's higher ups that gave down, these orders to them. And Kasurik and Vogel, I would imagine, have to be the top suspects when we're talking about who's pulling the strings on Coburn and Link. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. I got some videos. I got some more live chats with Thomas. Mysteries of Manitowoc planned. We're going to get that out as soon as possible. Tons of information to cover. Have a live chat. I'm trying to get Dave Bagata to do the live chat with me and Thomas the next time we talk about the Ricky case. And I want to do a video on cell phone tower data. I have a lot of information to cover on that, but I don't want to rush and do one. I want to fully prepare that before I do that video. And I also have a video I'm working on with the Denny suspects, why Buten and Strain wasn't allowed to, their motion was denied to provide Denny suspects. I read his whole decision on that, and there's things that I want to talk about in it. And so I have a lot of content that I'm working on, and I appreciate everybody that's subscribed to my channel so far. It makes it a lot more interesting when you can interact with people and, get information from people and even become friends with some of these people. So like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you're viewing this, I have a lot more content that's going to be coming out. And that's going to be it for today. Y'all have a good rest of y'all's evening.